I just started
Perfect.
recording.
All right. Then I don't have to bother Hanlu again. Okay. I love how it gives us the opportunity to leave this meeting now that you're recording it. Okay, cool. All right. Well, one more technical hurdle jumped. I will go ahead and kick us off, and hopefully we'll be joined by a few more folks throughout the session. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Melissa Grizzle, and I'm the Director of Entrepreneur Development for ITEN. Welcome to another wonderful session of ITEN Second Thursday at Venture Cafe. And tonight we are really excited to have a couple of our mentors who are serial entrepreneurs and have a lot of experience. So not only themselves, but also working with many startups around early traction. So we're gonna dive into that momentarily. But I wanted to just also do a small advertisement for our Eureka Validation Program. We have open applications right now. It is focused on early customer traction and really doing some deep diving on customer discovery and putting together the best possible offer for your potential customers. So your traction will take off much more quickly once you've done that important work at the beginning. So we have applications open until January 27th, and you can go to itenstl.org. There's a big button in the middle of the page that talks about it. So go to our website and take a look at that. And so we wanted to kind of kick off this year with this important topic, and also leads well into those that are working on their Eureka applications and hopefully being part of our first spring cohort of 10 startups. So without further ado, or we had a little bit of ado today, but after about 12 minutes of ado, we're ready to dive into getting your first customers with our wonderful mentor, Matt Camp, and our newest EIR, GV Freeman. I'll let GV and Matt introduce themselves because they all wear about 42 hats and I don't want to get any of them wrong. So yeah, let you guys introduce yourselves and take it away.
Cool. Matt, you want to go?
Sure, that works for me. Yeah, Melissa, thank you so much for the introduction. I mean, everything that we do with both Venture Cafe and ITEN, I really enjoy. Like, it's something that I know, GV and I have teamed up for a couple speaking related things in the past, and we mentor for your programs too. So make sure to continue to check out ITEN's programs. I can't speak highly enough of my my experience there. But just to give a little background on me, I run partnerships over at Deal Machine, which is a lead gen technology for residential real estate investors. So that's been a really fun, I started there back in September. It's been a really fun deep dive into an industry where before that I was running partnerships for an agency here in town called Influence & Co. We were really focused on like content marketing and that type of thing. So my background is kind of a mix of marketing, sales, partnerships, run the gamut between those subjects. So anything around growth like that. I also co-organize a fun little virtual happy hour as well. And I'm a family man too. So I definitely, Marlon, a lot of the stuff you're talking about with Demi Tool really speaks to me of like, how do we find that work-life integration or balance or whatever the word you might be. As you might hear my kids, hopefully not come through the ceiling here, but the mic might pick it up a little bit here and there. So GV, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Again, thanks, Melissa. And for everybody that's joining us today. I, as Melissa mentioned, am a new addition to the ITEN team as an entrepreneur in residence. So I'm getting to help a lot more people now than even I was before. Prior to this, I have ran a couple of startups, running one today that was hit pretty hard by COVID. So middle of last year, I did a kind of a self-pivot for my business, and I'm doing a lot of fractional chief marketing officer work, and that's for a lot of SaaS companies, tech companies in general, professional service companies. It's been something that I've been doing since early 2000s. So I mostly help B2B tech companies get to market and grow once they're there. And then, within the last year or so, I've started to do a lot of coaching and mentoring work specifically with founders. So I'm coaching them both in business and in self-care. So I use the 80-20 rule, saying that you should spend 80% of your time working on your business and 20% working on self-care. And that's sort of a way to keep from getting burnt out. So that's a little bit about me. We'll kind of dive right into the content. Before we go there, I'm going to post something in chat. If everybody could just look at chat for me. I'm asking 2 questions in there. Are you a B2B? Are you a business to business company, or a B2C, business to consumer? So who are you selling to? And if you're comfortable saying kind of what stage you're in, are you, do you have an idea and you're wanting to get to market? Have you launched but not generating revenue yet? Are you making less than 10,000 a year, 100,000 a year, less than $1 million a year, or greater than $1 million a year? So if you're comfortable sharing any of that, it would help Matt and I kind of give you an idea, or maybe frame some of the conversations. So.
Yeah, and we can really speak to a variety of things under this subject. So feel free to make it interactive, and you know, especially since we have a nice private group, like we want to give you guys time to pick our brains too on any specific angle. So I appreciate you guys throwing more context in the chat here.
Yeah, and anytime, I have the participant list over here on my left. So if you do see me looking at my left-hand screen, if you have a question or want us to stop, just raise your hand, and I should be able to pause for a second. So B2B, B2C, B2B, a little of both. People making money, which is great. Congratulations if you're already making money. And to be totally honest, if you haven't started building your product yet and you're already thinking about customers, how to get your customers, I would say that you're ahead of the game. This slide that I'm showing right now, I talk to a lot of founders about, because honestly, a lot of founders think that the stork brings you customers. And the next slide, oftentimes that if people think, if I just build this, customers are going to come automatically. And I like to tell founders that if you build it, they will come as a plot line and not a business plan. And I have very rarely, if ever, seen this idea work. A lot of times founders, we have this gift of solving problems and creating solutions, but a lot of times the solution that we're creating doesn't have a big enough problem. So that's sort of what we're going to talk about today. There is this fantasy when it comes to getting your first customers, and especially if you're in the B2B world. So this is probably kind of a B2B example. If you're in the B2C world, we're going to try and divide it up. Matt's going to talk a little bit more about B2C. I'm going to focus a little bit more on B2B. In this example, this kind of fantasy world, I go find a company who wants, or who I think needs my product. And then I find somebody in that company who will talk to me. And then they tell me, yeah, your product is great. And then I send them a proposal, and they sign that proposal, and they send me a check every month for the next like 3 to 5 years, and everyone lives happily ever after. And I will tell you that if this is how you think selling into a business is going to work, and sometimes even selling into an individual, you are definitely in fantasy world, because this is sort of how the B2B sales process works. It is really complicated. And honestly, I haven't even read this slide. I looked at complicated B2B sales process on Google, and I just know that this is the way that it feels like when you're selling to a company. You are dealing with sometimes 5 to 10 people, and the sales cycle is really long, and there's a lot of different opinions. And it's always going to be more complicated than you think. And that's for somebody who actually needs your product. And I think that's kind of where we want to start today. Before you even get to the sales process, there's a couple of things that Matt and I wanted to share. The first thing, and I think probably the most important, and sometimes where entrepreneurs and founders and innovators in general get off course, is we focus on the solution. We think in our own head that we have this great solution to a problem. So what we end up doing is we design the solution first, and then we go out and find people that need to buy that. One of my favorite quotes from Theodore Levitt is, people don't want to buy a 1/4-inch drill, they want to buy a 1/4-inch hole. And I think that this is where we oftentimes get off track. So many times in my mentoring have I found founders who have spent thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars building a product, and then they only realize later that nobody really needs that product. So what we're going to try and talk a little bit today is focusing on the problem first. And then
just from my perspective,
kind of the last thing I want to, yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, Phoebe. There's a little delay there, so I don't mean to cut you off. Just
No,
really
fine.
quick, from my perspective too, I know there might be people on this call that even do like pitch competitions and things like that. I know I was very involved with like Startup Weekend and other like, ITEN type events and things like that. It's always funny to see the engineer, the developer who has a vision and won't listen to anything otherwise, and has to it's kind of like insulting their work of art if they work on it. Or I see the other way around of like a marketing or sales leader who's like, yeah, I have this idea, let's have the programmer build it, and they should be the one taking the lead. Like they're a lot of times sitting back on the sidelines when they're not the ones going out there and talking to the customer and getting this market product fit and finding what is that hole, not the screw to go through it. So just from my personal experience, I see that often.
Yeah. So if you have a product already built, we're going to give you some really good ideas and tools and tips and tricks. If you don't have your product built yet, what I would recommend is that you stop building your product today and you start looking at the problem. So when you think about the product, you are really focused on the solution. And what I'm going to recommend is, rather than seeking product market fit, which is a very common term used in the software world, what we want to look for is market product fit first. So I want to go out and talk to as many potential customers as I possibly can before I start building the product. The more customers I talk to, the more information I'm going to have to build a better solution.
Yep.
So I'm going to turn it over to Matt a little bit to chat about buyer's journey stuff.
Yeah, and I think the buyer's journey really highlights why this market product fit mentality is just so important for everyone who's launched a product already. They may have already encountered some of this, but the buyer's journey, when you think about it, how modern buyers act, B2B or B2C, there's really kind of three stages that we can categorize this into. There is the awareness stage. So that's really kind of, helping them, find you to begin with, helping you really kind of challenge their status quo and help you really make them commit to making a change. Like how can they be even aware of you right now, and move into that commitment stage, that consideration stage, where the awareness stage is about getting out in front of them, getting those eyeballs. The consideration is actually helping them change their mind and change their perspective on something and understand that there's a solution. And when they go into understanding there's a solution, that is really the decision stage. That is where they can justify the decision to actually invest in your product, in your service, B2B or B2C. So people are going through this journey, and for you to even have someone really have the chance to go down this journey, you need to have that market product fit to begin with, and you need to kind of reverse engineer this journey before you even have something to put in front of them. So I know right now, like, thinking through just in general how to get that feedback. I mean, if you have a product launch already, hopefully you're having or already have had many conversations with your potential buyer. For us, I know, to give you some examples of what we did when we went through launch, we had plenty of calls, meetings, conversations with both a potential customer, and once we started winning customers, it was those current customers. Like, we were using that feedback from them to really kind of form and fit this vision to fine tune the product the right way. So this feedback loop is always informing us. Even outside of that, we are looking at what are those FAQs, what are those common objections that come up that people are searching for, especially online. There's a wealth of data out there of keyword traffic that you can look up. Like, you can use things like SEMrush as a tool. We'll get into plenty of tools later, but SEMrush is a tool. Moz is a tool that you can look and try to find keyword traffic in your specific industry and within your specific niche of the problem you're trying to solve, and understand what are people naturally looking for, what are those needs that they already have that they're searching for, that you can then solve for them. So this buyer's journey, it simplifies the idea of awareness and then changing their mind and then decision, because the modern buyer, I mean, it's really more of a cycle than this. You're bouncing back and forth, and they might hear about you here, 1 week, and then, a month later they think about you again, or they end up back on your website again in some way. And then 6 months later, they're ready to buy. Like, inbound is a little more complex than just the straight line like that. But the goal here would be, all right, how do you create a product and, use marketing and sales to, bring awareness, to stay top of mind with them, to change their thinking to that consideration stage, and then change their thinking enough to help them realize, oh, I have a pain that you're solving, and actually make a buyer's decision there.
Yeah, you mentioned something in that very last sentence that I want to tag onto, and the word was pain. And oftentimes when we think about searching for a problem, the example that I like to give in the buyer's journey is I wake up one morning and my throat's sore. So I walk into the bathroom and I open my mouth and I see these little white spots on the back of my throat. At that point, I am in the awareness stage. I have some issue, I have some pain, and I need to figure out how to solve that. I think that it's really important, if you haven't built your product yet, to go out and find people that are experiencing that pain, and talking to them about how they want to solve it. In my case of I have white spots on my throat, I might go to the internet and I might start looking on WebMD and figure out that I might have strep throat. At that point, I need to figure out how to solve that strep throat problem. And that might be going to the emergency room. That may be going to my primary care doctor, might be going to a holistic practitioner of some kind, something like that. So I have a lot of solutions, potential solutions to my problem. Once you're already in the solution, now you've sort of forgotten about the problem. So spend as much time with your customer talking about their pain and talking about their problem, because that is going to be the inflection point. That's going to be the point where they say, how do I solve it? And you want to be top of mind when they realize, or when they want to start solving their problem.
Yep. And I know we're going to kind of talk a little bit about breaking down B2B versus B2C in each of those, types of buyers. The staying top of mind piece too. We'll go through kind of marketing and sales and how to think through that for that particular piece. But GV, do you want to kind of go through what an ICP looks like?
Yeah. So I'm going to focus more on the B2B side. So if you are selling to businesses and trying to figure out how am I going to get those very first customers, you want to start developing what we call an ideal client profile. So this is a set of qualities, characteristics that describe the primary types of businesses, not necessarily the individual buyers that would buy your product, because you're going to, there's thousands and thousands, if not millions of businesses out there. You need to figure out who you want to try and sell your product to. So the way that we do that is coming up with an ideal client profile. And here are some kind of characteristics of creating your ideal client profile. So what industry are they in? What vertical are they in? So if you're selling to medical versus maybe the fitness industry versus any one of the industries that you can imagine out there, you want to try and pick, and I would recommend as a startup without lots and lots of resources, you want to pick one industry and you want to go tackle that industry first and do your best to try and get into that industry. It's going to be much easier to sell people when you focus. I think there's a slide a little bit later on where I talk about not boiling the ocean. I find a lot of founders say, oh, I have a great product, so many people can use it, I'm going to try and market to everybody. And when you market to everybody, you're really marketing to nobody. So pick an industry, potentially pick a geography. Depending on the type of product, you might pick a very local geography. You might pick the United States, but I would recommend trying to pick the geography that you're most familiar with and that the product is built for. If you're going to have to start translating to another language or something like that, it becomes a lot more challenging. The size and number of employees. If you are a brand new startup and you're trying to sell to companies that are on the Fortune 100 list with thousands of employees, it's going to be really challenging for you. If you're a small startup, it's much easier to start selling to smaller businesses. Look and see what kind of budget they have to buy your product. Look and see how much revenue they have, how much revenue that company is making. Now, if you are working with private companies, you're not going to have a good idea of how much revenue they're making, but you can also kind of get an idea based on the number of employees. Also, decision-making factors, like why might they be making a decision? If, like I said before, if I'm trying to hang a picture, I need a hole in my wall. So if you see people walking out of the art gallery, those people might be needing a drill because they need to hang this new picture. You need to go to places where people are making those decision points and ask them at that moment why they are choosing to make decisions on their next purchase. Any pain points that they may have, again, pain equals problem. Any business objectives? Do they want to increase revenue? Do they want to sleep better? To the point that we were talking about before, and any like other notable attributes that they might have. So if there are any commonalities between those businesses, start writing those down. Once you have a good idea of who your ideal client is, then you can go out to lots of different tools, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. You can plug in some of those key characteristics and you can find lots of companies that look like them. So I'll hand it over to Matt now on the B2C side.
Yeah, in the B2C side, there are some similarities, but I think the exciting thing about working on the B2C piece is just the scalability of what you're talking about. And when we say persona, it's a little bit different than your ICP, just because you're really speaking on what would be kind of this personification of your buyer. It's a semi-fictional representation of the customer that you're going to be selling your product to. I think for us to kind of talk about, how we think about that, you can break that down into all these different subcategories. You've got, again, background. So like, what is their job? What's their career path? What's their family? Demographics that GV was touching on in terms of, it can be any, you want to get even more specific outside of location, but even things like gender, age, income, other places they hang out, other goals they're trying to accomplish, other challenges they see. To give you an example of kind of how we've done this at Deal Machine, we have 3 different personas. There's Frank Freedom Seeker, who is purely a B2C. We've got Henry Wholesaler, and then Emily Enterprise is more of a B2B ICP than anything. But Frank Freedom Seeker, he's aged 21 to 45, works a 9-to-5 job, has been interested in real estate at least 6 months, up to 2 years, but hasn't taken action, hasn't done any deals. He's probably attended a meetup or a boot camp to learn, but hasn't really actually bought like a coaching program or anything like that. He hasn't really invested too much in taking action. He's read Rich Dad Poor Dad. He's read a couple books like that. So we've gotten really specific on the actions he's taking, what's holding him up, where he's hanging out. And then we have a list of questions of what does he ask? What is he asking when he visits our website? Like, what are the questions that he is already coming to the table with that we know we need to have ready to go? We need to be able to answer so that way he even finds us in the first place. Everything from like, how can I improve my skills using Deal Machine? Where do you recommend looking for deals? Do you have any advice? Because I'm very green to this entire idea of real estate investing, like, really broad questions, and then more specific long tail questions that we include in our marketing, we include in our messaging, we include in our product. And we've gotten this just because we've talked to a ton of Frank Freedom Seekers to really figure out how can we be this entry-level tool for them into the market. We have that segment. We have another segment that's a little more advanced, and that's Henry Wholesaler. That's, again, age 21 to 45. We have a headline for these as well to say, like, for Henry Wholesaler, it's to be more streamlined and keep more money for himself. So meaning, how do I create a more efficient business? And there you go. There's an example. We have literally, these types of pages lined up internally that are designed out to show like a very fictional, semi-fictional person, but the characteristics nailed down as specific as this. Henry Wholesaler is the CEO of a 1 to 3 person team. He got into real estate to kind of escape from this 9-to-5 job, but he's starting to get traction. Like he's, spending a lot of time working on these deals, but he needs to be much, much more efficient in order to scale. So we have listed out what are the knowledge and the tools that he has that he's looking into as well. What are his responsibilities, his biggest pain points, his attitudes that he has. For example, he's not usually super tech savvy. He needs our app to be simple. He has the grit to get things done, but he's not coming in using all this technology already. So we know all these hurdles that we've kind of distilled down our customer conversations to and created these, semi-fictional people to be able to really hone in on our message.
So
Can I ask a question, Matt?
Yeah, go for it.
So you said you talked to a lot of frank freedom seekers or whatever.
Yes.
So how did you get them to talk to you? Where did you find them? And like, how did you approach that conversation?
Yeah, some of the tools I have listed out later on, I think will help answer that question as well. But GV and I, we can dive into that here if you like, GV. I'm not sure where exactly you wanted to flow into that.
Well, I was just going to ask everybody on the call, if you want to know this information that I'm showing up here on the screen is a whole bunch of information. So Toby over here on the left is 26. She works in a record store. She's single. She's in New York. I want to ask you, how do you find this information out? So if you were starting a startup, or some of you already have a product in the market, how are you going to find this information? Just post it in the chat.
Come to this session and have you guys tell them.
flip the tables on them.
Yeah. Fair enough. Anybody want to? Nobody's really chatty today.
No.
So I think that the thing that is oftentimes most uncomfortable is figuring this stuff out. The personas that we were showing earlier are probably from people that already have clients. So they're going back to their existing clients and they're kind of reverse engineering their clients. If you don't already have clients, you're going to have to start talking to people. You're going to have to start doing interviews with people. You're going to have to start asking questions to people that you don't know. I'm going to tell you right now, if you are going to your friends and family and saying, hey, I got this great idea, would you buy it? Almost all of them are going to say, oh, absolutely. Yeah. Here's my credit card. And A, they're probably not your ideal client profile. They're probably not the persona that you need to be talking to. But B, they don't want to hurt your feelings. I hate to say it, but you need to talk to people at these early stages. You need to talk to people who are willing to like let you down or hurt your feelings. You need to get your feelings hurt earlier than later in the startup world. If this is your first startup, your feelings are going to get hurt a lot. So you just as well get used to it early on. But I think that the best thing that you can do is get outside of your primary circle. Maybe even ask your friend, hey, do you have any friends? Do you have any family members who might be willing to talk to me, who might be willing to buy this? I also recommend that people reach out on LinkedIn. Go find people that fit your profile on LinkedIn and say, hey, I'm a startup founder. I would really like to spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes talking to you about my product. Would you be willing to do that? And a lot of times people will be willing to take their time to put 15 or 20 minutes on the calendar.
I think too, especially if it's another argument to lead with the problem. So it's not even talking about your product or your solution. Is do you have 10 or 15 minutes to tell me about your pain?
Yep.
Yeah, fair enough.
And then it's a lot less of an opportunity to get your feelings hurt. It's an opportunity to learn about what, what you are trying to address.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, yeah. One of my favorite strategies there is to actually turn these conversations. I mean, obviously you have to preface it the right way, but if you can use these conversations and turn that into content, like people start podcasts, people start a blog, people start writing on LinkedIn, all these different mediums for this, one of the reasons being it opens doors. So if you have a podcast around, marketing or something, and your product's going to be marketing related, then you can use that as a reason to say, hey, I'd love to get you on and get your advice about this subject, People love to give other people advice in general. So using a platform that you build on your own, that you can give them a platform for, and then also asking them about something that they're already knowledgeable about. We've done that many, many times. Like we have a Thought Leader Spotlight series that we do, which is a YouTube series now. And a lot of times that can serve as research and development for a new product or a new feature, or launching a product. So I think you can, there's ways to build your own marketing while you're doing your market research like this.
I like this slide. Actually, don't tell anybody, but I actually took this slide driving down Gravois in St. Louis 2 or 3 years ago. I looked at the back of this whatever it is, vehicle, and I thought that it was a perfect example of specificity. Like, it's not people that are buying homes, it's inherited home buyers. And the closer and the tighter you can get your target market, the better information that you're going to be, the better understanding you're going to have about solving their problem. So do your best to get as tight as you can on your criteria. Going to jump in a little bit into the how of this. So this is a little bit more on the tools of the trade and some tips and tricks. This is sort of my opinion. There are only two ways to get customers. You can either earn them or you can buy them. And buying them in the beginning as a startup is expensive. Advertising is expensive no matter where you're doing it. So it's much easier to earn them and attract them by giving them things. And sometimes, what Matt's been talking about a lot is content and providing them answers to their questions and ways to solve their pain is going to be a great way to earn their trust. I'm going to talk a little bit on the marketing side, and Matt, jump in here.
Yep.
I got this whole list is straight from a book called Traction. There are two Traction books. If you go to Amazon and you type in Traction, there's going to be two of them. One has a gray cover and one has some blue on the cover. It's not the gray cover, and I'll post this link or post this presentation on my website afterwards, so you can click on that link at the bottom. But he gives you, I think there's 19 here, different ways to build traction. And he gives you a very specific methodology to go out and begin building traction. And you can build traction before you've ever built your product. You can start creating a blog, you can do some publicity and PR, you can start talking about ways to solve your problem before you ever write a single line of code. So I'll give you an example. We're working on a new product or a product idea today. And Matt, for instance, is going to help us at the end of February. We're going to do a webinar on a potential way to solve people's problems. And based on the interest of that webinar and the ebook that we write, based on the interest of attending those two things and downloading that webinar or downloading the ebook, will help us decide whether or not we should build the product and what features should go into the product. We're putting some valuable content out into the market first, seeing how people respond to that content. And if they really like the content, then we're going to start thinking about building the product. We're trying to get people solutions to their problems and help them become aware of a problem potentially before we're writing a single line of code. So Matt, any thoughts there?
Yeah, in terms of marketing, I know you're going to get into sales tools as well, but for marketing tools, I'm going to throw this in the chat. These are a few that I just had mentioned off the top of my head of like, here are the ones that we actively use as other places that you can either build that following as you start to get traction or look for those original customers. Like, I know I threw a couple things in there like BuzzSumo and SimilarWeb are great for discovering trending content and targeting blogs and, discovering places that you can, find forums of people talking that are your potential target customer to get feedback from. SEMrush and Moz are SEM and SEO tools to be able to help you identify those keywords that you can then address and find what are people asking about and what can I naturally create answers to on my website. ClickFunnels, that's more focused on affiliate, marketing, and it goes really well with AdBeat, which AdBeat is actually a technology that you can put in one of your competitors or anyone in your space to discover all of the social display ads that they are running currently. So put that in there. You can see like, hey, what are they spending money behind? What campaigns are they running that they're really putting a lot of dollars behind? Those are the ones that are probably working. So you can see their messaging and what's getting traction for them. Influence & Co. That, like I said, I spent 7 or 8 years there. Our blog put out a ton of content marketing content. HubSpot, I talk about them all the time. My previous couple companies have been built in HubSpot. PitchDB is a ex St. Louis guy who's built a podcast and speaking database. So look that up as well. And then Growth Tools is a great blog for learning just a ton of stuff around how to gain traction and then how to find that first customer too.
I'd also recommend Google Trends. So if you've never been out to Google Trends, if people aren't searching for what you are trying to build, that's an indication that one of two things might happen. Either people aren't having the problem that you're trying to solve, or you are trying to create a new category of software. And it's called category creation. And I'm telling you right now, if you are in the category creation business, it's not a super fun business to be in. It takes a long time and it's typically pretty expensive. when you have to teach people that they have a problem, and then teach them, in addition to that, teach them how to solve it and pay for it. Sometimes that can be a challenging road to hoe.
Yeah, not cheap. Mhm.
Yeah. So, actually, and I'm going to credit Matt with this. When I kind of shifted my business model, we were walking in the park 2-3 months ago, and I was asking him, what should I do with my marketing? How should I approach my personal brand marketing? And his first comment to me was, spend less time marketing and more time selling. And what that meant for me is reaching out to humans, not putting out social media, not writing a whole bunch of content. The marketing path is going to be slower and potentially more expensive if you're paying for it. The sales path is literally reaching out to people and saying, do you have this problem? Can I help you solve your problem? And here's a whole bunch of tools that you can use to help get to your customers faster. So as I mentioned before, if you have an ideal client profile, if you know how big the company is, what industry they're in, you can use LinkedIn Sales Navigator, or you can use Seamless AI. They're both paid products. I think LinkedIn Sales Navigator is $60, $70 a month. Seamless is about $99 a month. You can go out and find lots of contacts and lots of companies that meet your specific needs or meet your ideal client profile. Clearbit is a free tool that you can use to get email addresses off of LinkedIn. HubSpot CRM has great, you can use it for free and store all of your data, who you're contacting, who's following up with you, ways to keep appointments, look for prospects, things like that. And then the next two are really interesting. Apollo and Outplay allow you to send email sequences to individuals. So if you find 10 people and you want to send them a series of 5 to 10 emails over the course of 30 days and try and get them to interact with you, Apollo and Outplay are two inexpensive ways that you can do that. What you're going to find is that when you send an email to somebody, just like the emails that you get in your inbox, you don't often respond. You hit delete, you mark them as spam, whatever. In the business world, especially in the B2B world, we're getting hammered with these emails, but I'll tell you that email still is the highest ROI, lowest cost, highest revenue for any B2B sales channel. So email using Apollo or Outplay will definitely help you do that. And then WeConnect is a way to do that on LinkedIn. So you can reach out to LinkedIn people. If they accept your LinkedIn connection, you can begin sending them a sequence of emails as well. Calendly for online booking. So if somebody wants to schedule some time with you on your calendar, you can use a free Calendly account. And then EverSign, if you do bring on your first clients, it's a lot easier if you ask people to sign something and then find a scanner and scan you some contract. It's going to be friction in your sales process. So try and reduce as much friction as possible. Matt, anything in there?
Yeah, I think the sales and marketing balance, like you touched on at the beginning there, GV. Typically what I see work best for a startup for an individual is when you're in the sales process, that one-to-one is really, it's like one-to-one would be sales, one-to-many would be marketing. When you're in that one-to-one sales process, that's when you're getting so much valuable data around these conversations with your potential buyer. So you're learning so much about them, what you can solve. It's going to inform your marketing. It'll inform your product. It'll inform so many things. And it's something you can directly see an ROI to right away. Like, I know marketing, like we said, it's a longer term strategy. It's something that scales better, but it's going to take longer. It's going to, if you're going to pay for the marketing, just the one-off ads, that you don't have any residual effects of that. Once you're done with the ads, you turn that off. There isn't anything that you're not getting any other benefit from that. It's, it's off and on. It's like a faucet. So I try to tell people, like, yes, don't ignore marketing. You still need to have a credible presence online. You still need to be getting some content out there. You need to be able to invest in your long-term future, but start off making that individual, the one-to-one interaction, the bigger priority, and kind of see that, on a graph, you would plot that where they eventually cross at some point and you're spending more time on the scalable activities, but you got to start and understand your customer and use the insights you're getting from these one-to-one conversations to inform everything else.
I
So
think
we're-
people, yeah, I was just gonna be mindful of time. I think people that had questions were comfortable enough to put things in the chat. But just wanted to, yeah, we got about 8 minutes, though. I don't know, we'll be kicked out right at 5 since we got a little bit of a slow start, but I know you guys have hard stops fairly soon after 5, so.
Yeah, and I would just say if there's I was going to say two things. Just this one right here. Try not to sell to people who don't have money to buy your product. Try not to spend a bunch of time with people who can't sign the deal. Make sure that people need your product and make sure that they are willing to do it within a reasonable amount of time. So this is a kind of an old sales methodology. So make sure that the person that you're talking to does have all of these things before you're spending a ton of time with them. And then the last thing that I'll mention before questions is this idea of growth hacking. I just want to dispel a myth a little bit. A lot of founders say, hey, how do I do growth hacking? How can I get a whole bunch of customers really fast? And the reality is you need a product that people want to buy before you can do any growth hacking. You need to actually have a product in the market and people are already converting before you can employ a whole bunch of growth hacking techniques. So those are the only two kind of myths I wanted to dispel. And with that, I'm going to open it up to Q&A. You guys can all unmute yourself. So if there is somebody who wants to ask a question, feel free to just unmute yourself and ask.
To go to that previous point of if I can imagine the graphs of one-to-one and okay, so sales and marketing around how I understand it's a cycle. So around how long do you think that takes?
It's a great question.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, go ahead, GB.
I would just say that it's totally dependent on the market. B2B always takes longer, and the size of the deal is the amount of money that you're asking. The larger the amount, the longer the sales cycle. So if you can sell a monthly product, like think of Netflix, it's $13, $14 a month. Almost anybody who really wants to have Netflix can have Netflix. You can go in, enter in your credit card for $15. Nobody's thinking twice. When you start spending $500, $1,000 as an individual, the sales process is going to get a little bit longer. That might require you to go talk to your husband or your wife before you enter your credit card. The more people that you have to get permission from, the longer the deal is going to take.
And that number is really only going up too. Like if you're looking at like B2B enterprise sales and that type of thing, I mean, they say it's usually somewhere around 7-ish people at this point weighing on that deal. And that number has gone up the last like 4 or 5 years that they've done that study. So.
And I would just add too, if you've done, the more homework you've done to really understand everything, then that's going to speed up. It's the whole thing that I think we've been preaching a little bit that we talked about in ideation, Marlon, is slowing down enough to really understand and know and build the information, build your learning, so then when you actually start to put a solution in front of people, you've spent some time really understanding what that solution needs to be. So, because I've seen a lot of people that it'll take a lot longer because they're sort of not giving that front end attention. They're sort of kind of gathering things in a really haphazard way and making a lot of, I think that works, kind of gut stuff. And there's not a lot of empirical data going into their decisions about moving forward.
Yeah. So I wish there was an easy answer to that, but
I knew when I asked.
Other questions?
Hi. What about opening a new market? I mean, I was listening to what you were saying about creating a new category. I guess that we are in that position right now. Our project has been going on here in Mexico for the past 3 years, and we already have traction. We already have clients. And when we're trying to open new markets in the USA now, regarding that, through the customer discovery that we've been doing, we found out that there's actually competition in the US market, different to Mexico, but in the US market, there's already competition and similar softwares that we are and solutions that we are offering. but it seems that we are creating a new category. Actually, I just bought this book about category creation from Anthony Canada.
Yeah.
And it's helping me to understand this sort of approaching a new business, a new customer in the States. How would you, any piece of advice regarding that issue?
Read the book. Anthony's a really smart guy. So Anthony came from Gainsight, which is actually a St. Louis company, and released the book about, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago. Really smart guy. I would just tell you that if you are truly doing category creation, or if you're in that mix, plan on the whole process probably taking twice as much time, if not more, and twice as much money, if not more. The brand and the education and the evangelism that you have to deploy to create a new category is really hard. I think that one of the only reason that Gainsight was able to do what they did was because they got funding really early. Some smart people said, this is going to be a problem. We're going to give them a bunch of money. And Nick Mehta, their CEO, basically became the evangelist for customer success. He wrote a book. He spoke worldwide for probably 2 years before people really started to get the idea of customer success. And then once they did, Gainsight's product solved all of the pain that Nick was out ginning up. Like, he had to teach people about their pain before they really realized that they were having pain. And then when they did realize it, he was like, oh, by the way, I got this great little pain like salve over here. And I think that it just takes a long time to create that level of engagement.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, education and evangelism were the two places I was going to go to, where it's on the education side, that's just backed up by content. I know it's been a common theme with a lot of this, but being able to have you guys be a resource in that space. It's never too early to start putting out, content to start with that education process, whether it's a book and speaking or, whatever the style. And then the evangelism side, I know we have made partnerships such a big focus for us, like affiliate partners, people who already have that following that you need to get to and need to educate, and figure out how can you tap into those, thought leader influencer types that can elevate what you're talking about. That I think that those two methods are where I would start.
Great, thank you.
I'm an expert. Let me help you become an expert. Join the movement.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Well, I think we've squeezed a lot of great content into the past 45 minutes or so. And thank you so much to GV and Matt for sharing all your wisdom. And we will we'll, as usual, we record these and put our Second Thursday recordings up on our YouTube channel. So we'll have that available for if you're trying to remember all the tips and tricks and tools. You can reference the recording when it gets up there in the next 24 hours or so. And appreciate everybody coming over to our new room here and hanging out with us this evening. And we will see you in February. And thanks so much for being here. And we'll catch up next month at ITEN Second Thursday. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone.
Again,
Thanks, guys.